This episode of Reality Escape Pod is brought to you by Morty, Cogs by Clockwork Dog, Buzzshot, and Patreon supporters like you. Hey, escape room owners, are you sick of trying to figure out the marketing puzzle? Buzzshot's got you covered. It's an all-in-one solution for powering business growth and improving the customer experience. They offer a ton of pre- and post-game features, including waiver management, creating incredible branded team photos, and streamlined review management for Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google Reviews, Facebook Reviews, and they offer integrations with Cogs and Morty.
One of the most important business lessons I learned from my father was that people do business with people that they like. And the guys at Buzzshot are two of the most likable people that I have encountered in business. We've been working with them for years on Reality Escape Pod and Reality Escape Convention, and they are super easy to work with. And that is something that I also hear from their customers. They're responsive, they're on top of things, and they are easy to work with. That kind of reliability is worth a lot, especially when your business is built on top of the software that they provide. That's my favorite part of Buzzshot.
And they listen to their customers. I know that a lot of their customers just asked for corporate bookings support, and they told me they had just created a feature called Event Manager. So I really like working with vendors who listen to my input. Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. REPOD listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/REPOD. That's REPOD to learn more.
Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, your lifeline when you need a getaway from the real world. I'm David Spira, alongside my co-host, PG Law. Together, we're exploring immersive gaming from all angles, and we'll be joined by guests who really know their stuff. Today's guest is puzzle designer and magician David Kwong. David is best known in our community for his show, The Enigmatist, an immersive blend of enigmas and illusions. You can also find his work as a consultant for television and film in works like Now You See Me, The Imitation Game, The After Party, and so much more. He has done so many different things, and he has a brand new book out today titled How to Fool Your Parents, 25 Brain-Breaking Magic Tricks. Welcome, David.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
This is so thrilling because we love having magicians on the show, especially when they involve crossword puzzles into their tricks. And I'm so excited to dig into your book later on. I have a 10-year-old niece who loves magic tricks, so I got to get a signed copy from you, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on the book. We're going to explore your career for a while and then come back to the book because, at least from my perspective, your new book really feels like an interesting culmination of your career up to this point. And I feel like adding all of that context in will really make it even easier and better to appreciate what you've made.
Sounds good. I think that's right. I don't want to give away the punchline, but my career has evolved into one that is becoming more and more of like a family fun brand. And this book is all of that, an amalgamation of everything I love. So I look forward to discussing all these things.
You got to reel them in while they're young. So, David, you have carved out a really unique niche at the intersection of puzzles and magic. What are the origins of this cross-pollination?
It didn't used to be the cross-pollination. I actually started doing magic in, for lack of a better term, in the same way that everybody else was doing it. Now, I had my own personality imbued into my shows, of course, but the presentation of the tricks was rather traditional. And it wasn't until actually I was 30 years old at my 30th birthday party. As I was preparing for that, the light bulb turned on and I realized that I could fuse together the worlds of puzzles and magic. I was throwing a birthday party at the Magic Castle. I rented out the basement and I thought it would be fun to perform a trick for everybody. And that is when I came up with the crossword puzzle trick, which has become my signature feat. I do it at the end of every show. I do it at the end of the Enigmatist. And that involves me building a crossword puzzle as quickly as possible and hiding things throughout the puzzle. But that was the moment, the 30th birthday party, when I realized that taking these things that I love, magic and puzzles and word games, and fusing them together could cross-pollinate and synthesize into something new.
For listeners, if you have never seen David perform this crossword puzzle trick, there are videos of it on YouTube. We'll link them in the show notes. Watch this. I have watched it multiple times live on YouTube. It lands every time. It is such a phenomenal conceit, and the execution of it is beautiful, and it is just so uniquely you.
Oh, thanks so much. I don't mind saying what the reveal is. I hide the name of a playing card in the crossword puzzle. So maybe 25 minutes earlier, or if it's the Enigmatist, 90 minutes earlier, a playing card was selected. If it's the Jack of Spades, or, I then hide JACKOFSPADES in the crossword puzzle, usually on the diagonal. Sometimes I have to bend it to get it to fit, but I hide the name of the card in the puzzle. It's funny that for my 30th birthday party, it was the first iteration of it. I had somebody choose a playing card, and then I said to everybody, I'm going to show you something cool. And I basically turned my back for like 12 minutes as I just made this crossword puzzle as quickly as I could. And then I revealed the card, and everybody loved it. But now it's so much more interactive. Now, first of all, I'm hiding other things in the puzzle from throughout the entire show. Other names that have come up, other secret codes. And I'm also cluing the audience. I'm giving them New York Times crossword puzzle clues. They're giving me answers. They're throwing up letters and phrases and words to me. And we're all building this together in this communal spirit. But the way that it started was basically just, hold on a sec, guys, I'll be right back. And I turned around and I built this puzzle in about 12 minutes.
So when you say you build the puzzle, you mean you're coming up with the clues. You're coming up with the words and you're coming up with the clues at the same time?
For the most part, it's just the grid. It's the words. And everything obeys the rules of the New York Times crossword. That's a big part of it, is people love to learn about the things they've taken for granted, the conventions of the puzzle.
It's the high wire act of watching you up there doing this thing that seems like it should be impossible. It seems like you are going to screw it up. It seems like it's not going to work out. Like, how and why is this happening? It's almost at that intersection of magic and like Carney act in a very highbrow way.
Thank you so much. It falls into the category of what magicians call mental gymnastics. There is a lot of spectacle and a lot of enjoyment that comes out of watching me tap dance up there. And when I ask for a letter and someone gives me a cue and they throw me a curveball, it's like, can I make this work? Echoing what you just said about the playing card not really mattering, I learned for the very first time when I did my show in June in Chicago, I did it at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater, that the card is actually incidental to the whole mental gymnastics feat. Because here's what happened. At the beginning of the show, I have somebody choose a playing card. And I won't say exactly what the secret is, but I figure out what that playing card is. At its simplest, I don't mean to reduce the crossword puzzle feat, but it is pick a card, any card, and then I reveal it in the crossword, right? On that particular night, and if you were at Chicago Shakes on that night, you saw this, I got the card wrong. I thought they had picked, I don't remember what it was at the time, I thought they had picked the King of Clubs, and it was actually the King of Spades or something like that. It was close. But the point is, I made this puzzle in marker on the grid. I get to the end of the show and I say, what was your card? And the person said, King of Spades. And I said, that's interesting. And I hope you all find this still impressive. But I put the King of Clubs in the crossword puzzle.
You're like, that's not what the crossword says.
And you know what? Nobody cared. We all had a quick laugh. What helps also is there are like 5 other reveals and big endings to the show. So everybody goes home with their minds blown. But I, for a moment, because I'm a perfectionist, I was so bummed that I put the wrong card in the grid. And when I came out to the lobby to greet everybody afterward, nobody mentioned it and nobody cared. They really got enjoyment out of watching me build a crossword puzzle from scratch.
I can tell you from my experience in the audience, my reaction to the first time I saw you do that was I was already in awe. I was already like, okay, cool, this was a good finale. And then you added the other thing on, and I was like, F him. Like, how did he do that?
Yeah, that's the cherry on top as the playing card, I guess. I'm always going for that F him effect.
I can feel that. It feels like the entire show is this ebb and flow of that, and I love it.
So much of what you do comes back to the magic of words and the art of crossword puzzles. What first enchanted you about the crossword puzzle format?
Word games started with my mother. She's a history professor at the University of Rochester. She's a word nerd. She instilled into me a love for language when I was a little kid. There's a great photo I can share with you guys of us playing Scrabble together when I'm probably about 11 or 12 years old. She introduced me to the crossword puzzle, to wordplay in general. We still, every day, on the phone, solve the New York Times spelling bee together.
That is so cute.
It's a very sweet tradition. We started doing it in COVID, and we have not missed a day of getting to that genius level. We have never missed a day. Even on the day when my daughter was born, we found 10, 15 minutes to get on the phone together and do it. She is the word nerd. An apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I've always loved words. And then in college, I met a guy named Kevin Chosit. And Kevin is a dear friend and also an amateur magician. So he knows the two worlds as well. I'm often asking for advice and ideas from Kevin. And Kevin had already had a number of New York Times crossword puzzles published. So he showed me how to do it. I was enthralled. And my first puzzle was a co-construction with Kevin. We had this idea for a devious, really mean trick that we could pull in the Times. And we submitted it to Will Shortz, our fearless leader. And Will responded that it was so devious that it had to be the April Fool's Day crossword. And it just turned out that year, April Fool's Day was on a Saturday, the hardest day of the week.
Jackpot.
Yeah, exactly. Everything coming together. For those of you unfamiliar with the crossword puzzle, Monday is the easiest day of the week. It gets harder throughout. Thursday is extra tricky with things upside down, going backward, multiple letters in a square, which we call a rebus. Thursday is your license to be really tricky. Friday and Saturday are the hardest days of the week because they have the most white squares, the longest words, the longest phrases, more to figure out. And then Sunday is like a Thursday plus. It's bigger. It's 21 by 21. So April 1st, 2006 was a Saturday. We made it extra hard. We had this really devious trick. And I'll tell you what it is, but if you want to solve it, hit pause now. But basically, the central clue was how you have to think to solve this puzzle. And the answer was outside the box. And this was in the era of print, by the way. There was no digital puzzle at this point. And the word think, the letters THINK, were literally outside the crossword puzzle. They spilled into the margins of the newspaper. And that was pretty revolutionary at the time to mess with the format of the crossword like that.
Yeah, there'll be an image in the show notes. I'm looking at it now. It's really nifty. This actually brings me to my next question, which is looking at the crossword puzzles that you've published, particularly in the New York Times, but in other outlets as well. You appear, at least to me, to have a deep love and focus on surprises and tricks and unexpected transformations. Talk to me about what it is you're striving for on your best days as a crossword puzzle creator.
I feel seen. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm always trying to come up with a trick or a twist that involves a little bit of misdirection, and you can see why my worlds of magic and puzzles have overlapped. I only submit 1 or 2 a year now. I have only a couple published every year now, and I strive to have, like I mentioned, a Thursday or a Sunday puzzle that have license for trickery and deception. My favorite thing to do is to play with the conventions of the crossword puzzle, something that you're used to seeing every day that you open up the newspaper. So the one that I had this past April was a Thursday puzzle. Let me get the date for you. You can solve it if you want.
Do you have all of your own puzzles archived, like on your website or something?
No, they're all in this database, xwordinfo.com.
You can go to xwordinfo.com, look up any of these puzzles, and then just click on David Kwong's name, and then you'll have the whole list of all of his puzzles. So you can pull every single grid up and solve them, or just take a look at what he has done with them.
So this past April, it was a Thursday, and I really played with the convention of the starred clue. In the crossword puzzle, there are themed clues and answers Monday through Thursday and Sunday. Those are usually the long answers in the grid. And sometimes, in order to denote which answers and which clues are thematic, there's a star, there's an asterisk there. I decided to mess with this convention. So if you look at this puzzle, April 18th, 2024, you can see that 17 across is star, allot time. What you end up finding out in the puzzle is that this is themed on a star is born. And if you parse that correctly, it's actually a star is B or N. So you take that star in the clue that's usually used to denote that it's a thematic clue, and you change that star to a B or an N. Allot time actually became ballot time, and the answer was election day.
Oh my God.
So here are the others. Assist in a foursome, assist preceded by the star, became bassist in a foursome, and the answer was McCartney. So I like to play with the pronunciation changes also.
Really smart and really hard.
You include that in the long crossword answer, and now they have the information to go and input the themed answers. That is really devious.
I really appreciate that there is a unique perspective and approach to the way that you design crossword grids. And from reading other people's takes on it, it's clearly some people love it, some people are really frustrated by it, but I really respect taking this old form and putting some interesting and sometimes, I guess, maybe a little bit more aggressive twists on it. And I think it's really cool. I can rarely solve anything that you have made because I am not the best word puzzler. My wife, Lisa, much better at your puzzles than me, but I always appreciate the punchline and the path that you have to take to get to what you've made.
I know, this is blowing my mind because I was always really intimidated by crossword puzzles, and it wasn't until we interviewed Eric Berlin,
oh, great,
who came up with the puzzle snacks, little bite-sized easy ones, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting into the hang of crossword puzzles. So then I got the subscription to the New York Times crossword puzzles. I started doing, the Mondays and Tuesdays, and occasionally I'll foray deeper into the week, and that's when I discovered they've got all these crazy things. Like I did one that was a golf themed.
Oh, that was a great puzzle.
That was fantastic. All the O's were like the holes, and then it was like hole in one, like spiraled. I'd never even knew that this existed. And all these conventions and wordplays, and then I started getting into cryptics, but I got to play all of the puzzles now.
Ooh, you're into the good stuff.
We'll talk about cryptics in the bonus.
We're taking a moment to thank our sponsor, Morty. Morty is a free app for discovering, booking, tracking, and reviewing escape rooms, haunts, and other immersive social outings. Morty is available for all to use on its fantastic website experience, iPhone and Android apps. I believe in Morty so much that I have a stake in it as an advisor. Morty has a wonderful way for players to book games directly in the app. The catch is you can only do the bookings if the escape room company has signed up for the Morty Partner Program.
The best part about this is it is a totally free way to get new customers into your door. You don't pay anything to become a partner in this program, and you only pay when Morty gets you a booking.
This is just a better way to make sure that your company is presented properly on Morty and that you are able to get people booked as quickly and efficiently as possible from the app. And that booking flow is lightning fast. They have worked really hard to make the fastest and most streamlined booking system in the escape room world. It is super effective. I definitely recommend checking this out. To find the details for the Morty Partner Program, visit morty.app and click on Morty for Business. You can learn more at morty.app/repod. That's REPOD to sign up and get a special badge for our listeners. Link and details in the show notes. I and so many in the immersive world learned about you back in 2019 with the introduction of your show, The Enigmatist, in New York City. Since then, you have performed runs of the show in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and most recently, Chicago. It's an unusual show, and I'm curious to hear how you explain it to those who haven't been.
It's not easy. It's hard for me to tell my parents what I do every day. I call it an immersive evening of magic, puzzles, and cryptography. That's the official kind of tagline, but I have to say, it's a show about me doing everything I love on stage, which is magic tricks, puzzles, and history. I talk about the history of America's first code breakers, and it's interactive. Everyone has an answer sheet at their chair with a pencil, and I am doing magic tricks, and then I'm throwing puzzles up on the screen, and I'm asking people to stand up if they know the answer. I'm having you write down answers, and they all come together with a meta puzzle at the end, the answer of which unlocks the box on stage, so there are surprises in the box. And the whole thing starts with a mini escape room. When I first came up with the idea for the Enigmatist, I wanted it to be an actual escape room, but I quickly learned that you can't move 100 people through an escape room.
Throughput would be an issue. So it's like a collection of different puzzles, and everyone can go up to each one independently and solve it.
They're all on the wall, so there's no turning of dials or opening of drawers. You can have 20 people standing in front of a wall looking at the puzzle and working on it individually. It was originally at the Highline Hotel, which was the perfect venue for it because it's this Gothic style.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Former nunnery where you're walking through the courtyard and then you're winding through this dark corridor and you emerge into this space. You were greeted with the first room was the puzzle room. And then if you were quick to solve puzzles, then you could go have a drink at the bar or help other people. And then the third room was the showroom where you were admitted to the room if you had solved the 4 puzzles.
From my perspective, The Enigmatist is uniquely your show. It's the rare stage magic show where sitting in the audience, you intuitively understand that the performer on stage is the show. And if someone else performed it, it is no longer that show. What was it like developing this?
I think you got that exactly right because unfortunately I can't really scale this and enterprise it out to other people. It's just me.
Yeah, I can't imagine you being like, oh, I have Enigmatist puzzles and I'm going to put them in packages and sell them and other magicians are going to go on stage and do the thing. Not only does it feel like a bad idea, but it doesn't feel possible.
Like I said, it's a show about everything I love. And the best parts are the spontaneous moments in the show where I'm just riffing on weird little Scrabble definitions and crossword clues and making chemical element jokes. And all the people that love this stuff are coming out.
Yeah, it's a show that attracts the people who are going to love this. I can relate to this in that we put on all of these escape room events, these tours and conventions, and we end up with this audience that is like, oh, everyone is really happy to be here. Everyone is also responding to the kinds of jokes that we're making on stage that no one else in the world will appreciate except for the kinds of people who will walk into the doors of our events. I very much feel and can relate to the audience building that you're doing, and then the way that the show is like reinforcing the identities and feelings of that audience. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's really a safe space for brainy people. And it evolved into that, right? The spirit was always there, but it just organically became more and more that. And it started in New York as an evening show. It was 7 p.m. and then again, quick turnaround, 9:30 p.m. I did 2 a night on the weekends. And what happened is that people started to bring their smart 11 and 12-year-old kids, and those kids would start cracking the meta puzzle before the adults. And it was so wonderful when I got to call a young person up on stage to unlock that box, which I said was the big thing everyone's trying to figure out. And it was the best moment when a kid did it first. And the show has become more and more, I guess it's a family show now, but I don't dumb it down in any way. It's just that there's this self-selective audience where people are bringing their smart family members to the show, whether they are their grandparent that's been doing the crossword in pen for decades, or it's their grandkid, a really bright 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old kid who loves the periodic table of the elements. Those are the people that are coming out to the show.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel it. And the night that I saw it, by happenstance, was also the night that Will Shortz came out.
Oh, wow.
And watching the interaction between the two of you was an extra delight for me. It was also the first time I got to meet Will in person. We had emailed before, but seeing his pride in you was just such a special thing for me and Lisa, who had some understanding of the history there.
He has been a wonderful friend and mentor, and he obviously is the top person when it comes to puzzles and crosswords and puzzle editing, but he doesn't know the magic half of it. So I really enjoy fooling him with the principles of illusion. So he gets half of the show, but not the other half.
I gotta watch this show now. Do you have plans to mount additional runs, coming back to LA? Anything you can share about it?
I don't know where the next city is yet. I am working on it actively with my producers. There are cities that I'd like to go to. I think that it would be fun to go to Boston, Philadelphia, Seattle, Dallas would be fun. These are places where I've done one-off gigs, and I've seen that there's like really great receptive audiences. I think it would be fun to take this to London. PG, I have to say that I felt like I was kind of robbed a little bit when I did the show in LA because I did it during COVID. It was all sold out. It was very well attended because of these people that we're talking about who came out for a very much needed reprieve. But because everybody was in masks and because it was between those two, the Delta and Omicron variants, that it just didn't, I don't know. I wanted more of a homecoming LA show. So I'll have to come back. I was just talking to the Geffen yesterday about doing some fun stuff. If the Enigmatist doesn't come back to LA, the next show that I write certainly will.
Do you want to integrate tech into your game but don't really know where to start? Are you looking to take your experience to the next level with theatrical lighting and sound cues? Cogs by Clockwork Dog is an easy-to-use platform that will automate your escape room and immersive events. Their plug-and-play hardware works seamlessly with their software, so you can create a game with high-tech puzzles that will reliably trigger, complete with sound and lighting effects. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, Cogs has a solution for you.
Cogs offers an all-in-one control system. What that means is that when you are building your escape game, you can manage everything from a single application. You can build it in that application, and you can manage it in that application. And there's a customized dashboard that allows you to see all of your puzzles and how they map to one another at a glance. This means that you can organize everything, your text and audio hints, so that you can access them only when they're relevant, and also make them go away when the puzzles are completed. This removes a lot of irrelevant things from the flow automatically, and it's all so easy to manage just from Cog's system.
Yeah, it sounds like they take something really complex and make it easy for your game masters to use. And as we all know, training your employees is difficult, so don't make it any harder for them. REPOD listeners get 50% off the Cogs starter set, plus free shipping to the US. Use code REPOD at checkout. That's REPOD. For any questions about using Cogs or integrating tech into your escape rooms, make sure to join the vibrant community of creators on their Discord server. Learn more and start designing your game using their free tutorial by visiting cogs.show. Link and details in the show notes. During lockdown, you created and ran a magic and puzzle show called Inside the Box with the Geffen Theater. In it, you explored magic that would work without the magician in the room. Now, how did that show work from an audience perspective?
I actually found it really challenging to do magic through the screen. There was one cool magical moment in that show, but it was 95% a puzzle show. Now, I do have to tip my cap to some of my brilliant magician friends. They did manage to figure out how to do magic through the screen. Dan White, who performed his magic show at the Nomad for years and years, he did a virtual show. He might still be doing it. That's how good it is. He and some of his colleagues figured out some really cool ways to, he'll have a card chosen from the deck and then the doorbell will ring and there's like a balloon floating there with the card stuck to it. Like he came up with like amazing ways to safely interact with people. But anyway, for me, I wanted to do puzzles through the screen. I thought that having a game show format, an interactive setup would be best. So yes, it was called Inside the Box. I chose that title because I think the metaphor extended into covering how we all were on Zoom, trapped in these boxes looking at each other, but also the idea that we are at our most creative when we have parameters and constraints around us.
That's absolutely true.
I talk about that in the show. And to go back to the New York Times crossword puzzle, there are all those rules that you have to obey. The symmetry, the word count, and the ultimate constraint of the New York Times crossword is coming up with a new trick. It's done 365 days a year. How do crossword constructors come up with something new? When constraints are imposed on us, we are at our most innovative. And that was the spirit of that show. So my creative lead, Brett Benakis, he really helped me shape the show. It was only 24 people and me. It was a 5x5 Zoom grid. And the idea was that we would interact across the lines of our Zoom boxes. And I think it worked really well. I think people felt a real sense of connection. The puzzles were not, many of them were, I'm putting something up on the screen and I want you to raise your hand if you know it. So I was calling on people throughout, and it was very quick fire. There were probably 100 things that I was asking, and everybody got to participate and feel smart. But then there were cool puzzles where people were interacting across the borders that were constraining them. For one of them, I had 5 people in a row, and I gave them all a word to say. But those 5 words, when blended together, they made a phrase. For example, one person would have the word thick. The next person would have holler, huff, Huff. The next person would have tusk, Tusk. And the last one was Eye. So it was thick, holler, huff, tusk, eye. And if the people said that in quick succession, it sounded like thick, holler, huff, tusk, sky, thick, holler, huff, tusk, sky, the color of the sky. And then anybody could raise their hand and say blue.
Oh, I love that.
It was a really fun show.
I've seen puzzles like that in escape rooms where you have to read it out loud and like figure out the word. That's super fun.
I guess it's oddly ironic. The last word in that sequence is eye, because you suffered an eye injury as a result of producing this show. Is that something you're willing to share the story of?
Yes, I'm probably the world's first Zoom injury. It was a difficult time. I ran that show hundreds of times, probably 200 times, because it wasn't just every evening, but also companies were booking me for it during the day. And we were all so worried. Performers were worried that we would have nothing to do during the pandemic, but we were pleasantly surprised to find out that companies and parties and people needed interaction and connection. So I was running this show all the time. And what happened is during one of the shows, probably show 200, I started having difficulty speaking and I blacked out and dropped my head into my hands and was rushed off to the ER. And what we discovered is that the lights that I was sitting in front of that were illuminating me for the camera had destroyed my eyes. They had severely damaged my corneas. So I wound up having to heal from that, and I sat in a pitch black room for a couple of months with zero light. The cornea is the protective layer, so I couldn't take light into my eyes. I wasn't blind. I could see my hand in front of my face in a dark room, but I basically couldn't take light into my eyes. So I had to cover up the little red light on the TV. I had to tape every window, certainly pitch black, closed, cover up the microwave.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All light caused incredibly painful migraines.
Sorry you had to go through that. I am curious, what was it about those lights? Is there something that people in general should know about lights and eye health that apparently is just not knowledge that is out there? Because I was shocked when I heard your story.
Yes, I will tell you, after going to half a dozen ophthalmologists, that the entire population of the world is suffering from dry eyes because of screens. And for the most part, young people can withstand it, but it catches up to you. And what you should do before you get on a long Zoom call is you should put in eye drops. And it's just to give you a little extra lubrication. You sit there without blinking. What happened for me is that if I had done that, I would have probably been okay. Actually, I don't know. It was twofold. I was getting slammed with light, but also the room was small and it was hot, so it was baking my eyes, and that caused them, I think, to fall apart. I think the eye drops would have helped a lot, and I recommend that to all of you. Eventually, after a few months, the corneas healed, but my brain was still really mad at me when light would hit my eyes. And the way the doctors described it is the fire is out, but the fire alarm is still going off.
They're like, not this again.
Yeah, that's right. So what was interesting is that ambient light through the window and then eventually going outside, I was able to get that back first. That did not cause any pain.
Interesting.
But a little light bulb would cause brain pain still. And there's something about that type of light that when it hits my eyes, my brain gets mad. And I'm using present tense because, to be completely honest, for the first time in 3 years since this has happened, I actually have started getting a little bit of pain looking at the screen, and it's okay. It gets better and better every day, but I'm training my brain to not freak out. It's okay. This light is not going to hurt you. So that's a pretty intense story I just told all of you. But the thing is, it was a really transformative time for me. Sitting in that pitch black dark room, I solved a lot of puzzles over the phone with my friends. They would call me and we would solve cryptic crossword clues. I was doing the spelling bee with my mother every day. That's when it really became a special thing. And I know this for a fact, that I will do a very cool magic show about light and dark at some point. And this is how we express ourselves through our art form.
I look forward to that show. I'm sorry about the path that you had to take to get to it. I hope that you're able to continue to heal through this.
Thank you. I'm able to tell the story because everything's good for the most part, and it was a tough time, but I'm all good now. So thank you.
David, you've done a lot of work consulting on and producing television in collaboration with puzzle designer Dave Shukin and magician Francis Minotti. You have consulted on things like Now You See Me, The Imitation Game, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, Ant-Man, Project Power, and so much more. What does this kind of engagement usually look like?
It's taken a lot of different forms. My first big movie, which launched my career in a number of different ways, was Now You See Me. And I was in Hollywood at the time working for a movie studio. I was working at DreamWorks Animation, a completely different part of the film business.
The desk job days.
The desk job days. And I was in story development at DreamWorks Animation. It was wonderful. It was like boot camp for storytelling. But I was tracking all the magic projects, and I found out about Now You See Me and also a dozen other Houdini movies. I was working on all of them, trying to help them come to fruition. And Now You See Me got the green light. So that was the opportunity that actually got me to quit the desk job and go take a risk on something and be out in the world as a magician. So when the movie wrapped, I decided I was going to keep going and perform professionally and try to get hired. And the movie did well, so that further accelerated things. So that was very much like magic consulting. And probably the biggest difference I made on that movie was working with the screenwriters to help them come up with cool ideas and root the movie in the principles of illusion. But there was also some teaching of sleight of hand to those actors and designing illusions. The puzzle stuff, it's adjacent, of course. Let me put it this way. Not all movies are about magicians, but a lot of action movies and capers and heist movies, they need cool set pieces. They need cool stuff. So I often get calls from screenwriters saying, our heroes are trapped somewhere. How are they going to get out? You know? So I work a lot with Dave Shukan for puzzle stuff. I work a lot with Francis Minotti and John Stessel on magic stuff. And it's been a cool little side hustle.
It's fun. When you create a puzzle for screen, or even just a group of people at a party, how do you know if it's too easy or too hard in order to account for that wide range of skill levels that a TV audience is going to bring in?
I think there are two approaches. The best way to solve for that is to have multiple tracks, to be honest. So you can have an easier level of puzzles so that everybody can get through it and everybody can feel smart. And that's the most important thing, is allowing people to feel accomplished and feel smart. I also want something there for the more seasoned puzzler. So I often have a second layer, a hidden track that a more experienced puzzle solver can take so they can go deeper. So a great example of that would be The After Party. Now, Chris Miller, who created the show, he's an avid puzzler as well. And he reached out to me and Dave, and we ended up hiding in every episode a clue of some kind that revealed who did not commit the murder. So we called them the not the puzzles. So it was like, not the fireman, not the cook, not the left-handed person. I can't remember what they were exactly, but they were in that spirit. And that was in every single episode. In season 2, we did the same thing, but there was also a hidden flower in every episode. And if you found those flowers, they led you to a puzzle hunt, and you could solve this really amazing group of puzzles that Dave authored. Just having something for everybody is usually what I try to do.
I like that. Now, I have a pitch for you. I just want to hear your thoughts about this. Have you ever thought about hiding a puzzle as part of an object rather than inside an object, so that the main character could say, the puzzle isn't inside the house, the puzzle is the house?
We talked about this before.
No, but I did talk to Dave Shukan.
Yes. We are always flagging those, and we have a spreadsheet that is not very populated yet, but we want to find all those tropes and write them down because you hear them in every procedural crime-solving show. I love that you just said that.
I sent a message to Dave and asked him if there were any questions that would surprise or delight you. And I'll say this, when I'm prepping to do an episode, I reach out to a lot of people who are close to the person I'm interviewing, when I know them or when I can get connections to them. And I had never met Dave before. Strangely, we've never crossed paths in spite of having a staggering amount of friends in common. But when I sent him that message, he sent me the most thorough set of questions and topics. And as someone who collaborates with lots of people, I was just like, this is the kind of guy that I like collaborating with. And in my very limited experience with him, I was like, that's a good egg.
He is so thorough, and this is his superpower. So Dave, first of all, you should have him on the show. He is one of the finest puzzle makers in the country, if not the world. He is incredible. If you Google Dave Shukan puzzles, you'll find his site where he has all his brilliant puzzles. You should solve them. Anyway, he is a joy to collaborate with because he is so encyclopedic and so thorough and so generous with his time, too. He's just the smartest.
I was really appreciative. Before we move on to your book, I want to ask you about the 2 different TED Talks that you have performed, one quite recently. Both are available on the TED website and on YouTube. How did you find yourself in that world?
I talked about this period of time in my life when everything sort of started to come together. I realized that I could cross-pollinate magic and puzzles. I created the crossword puzzle trick. Around the same time, I started consulting on movies. I was finding my voice, and I quit my day job, and I set off down the road to be a professional magician and puzzler. The TED Talk world, I think, was a natural extension of this cerebral approach that I started to bring to magic. The thesis that I've always had is that magic tricks are puzzles. And by that, I mean that magic isn't real, right? I like to pull back the curtain on magic and teach people the principles of illusion. I think when people have an understanding of the fundamental ways that magic works, I think they appreciate the art form more. And most magicians aren't this way, of course, right? But there are some prominent practitioners of this approach. Penn and Teller, of course, for decades have been irreverently doing the cups and balls with clear plastic cups, right?
I love seeing that every single time.
Yeah. So there was a small group of us that acknowledge right up front that it's all tricks. And for me, I contextualize it by saying it's all a puzzle and it's something for you to figure out. And if you can figure out the solution to the magic trick, then good for you.
Even knowing how it's done, it's still impressive. Like the art of sleight of hand and being able to talk and look casual while you're doing it. You know, because I'll read how to do magic tricks and I'm like, forget it. There's no way.
Yeah. All that information is out there now, but hopefully when you see somebody put it into practice, it's still very impressive. So the TED Talk world was an extension of that. And in 2014, 10 years ago, I was asked to be on the TED main stage. I think that really transformed my career. That was one of the biggest moments for me. And I mentioned Will Schwartz before being such a mentor and supporter, and he allowed me to actually hide a message in that morning's New York Times crossword puzzle. So I ended up doing a trick on stage at TED, and as the kicker of the whole thing, the message that came out of the talk, I then said to everybody, reach under your chairs, pull out this morning's New York Times crossword puzzle, and that message can be read in the first letters of the clues going down. So it was very kind of Will to let me do that, and it changed my whole life.
Blew everybody's minds.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
Okay, we've explored a lot of the things that you have done, not exhaustively, but we have hit the various things that ran through my mind as I read your brand new book, How to Fool Your Parents, 25 Brain-Breaking Magic Tricks. Tell us about the book. Who's it for? Why'd you write it?
I mentioned that my brand has sort of been organically evolving into one that's more family-focused. And The Enigmatist started as an evening show in New York. The Kennedy Center in DC started marketing it as a family show, and more kids started coming. And I just realized that everything's just been flowing together. And the approach that I bring to magic right now is one where I want everybody to feel smart. And one of the nicest things that somebody said to me after my show was, you don't do magic to people, you do magic with people. I thought that was so nice. And that's not every magician's approach, and it doesn't have to be. There are incredible magicians that will read your mind and put you in a trance and make you feel like something eerie and weird is going on. And that's very effective. But for me, it's more collaborative. It's a little warmer. As I mentioned before, I love it when the kids come up on stage and unlock the box. So the spirit of How to Fool Your Parents is one that encourages young kids to take up magic and to feel smart. And feeling smart is probably the through line of everything that I do. I mention in the book that, and this is a line that comes out of Now You See Me actually, that you should always be the smartest person in the room. I love that idea that this book allows you to become the smartest person in the room. And I tell the story about when I first knew I wanted to be a magician. And I was a young kid. I was at a pumpkin patch picking a pumpkin for Halloween. And my dad was right there with me. And there was a magician performing at this pumpkin patch. And the magician did a classic kid's magic trick. He took a sponge ball and he put it in my hand. And he held up a second one and he made it disappear. And when I opened my hand, I had 2 sponge balls. My mind was blown. But this moment then happened, which changed my entire life. And he turned to my father, the biochemist, the smartest man alive, and he put that sponge ball in his hand. He made the second one disappear. My father opened his hand, and he suddenly had 2. And I turned to this omniscient character, and I said, how did that work? And he said, I have no idea. And that's when I knew that I had to be a magician. Always be the smartest person in the room. If you can learn magic, you can fool your parents. You get to make the rules, right? You get to have secret knowledge that other people don't have. So that's the spirit of the book.
I love that the book is a wealth of information for a particular type of kid. And also, I learned quite a bit along the way myself, particularly in the mentalism chapters, which is something that I had not spent much time reading up on in the past. It feels like it's written for kids who really like to know things, and even better, know things that other people don't know, which still resonates with my inner child.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach. I'm so glad that resonated with you.
My favorite part of the book was actually not only teaching them how to do the magic tricks, but also teaching them how to do the showmanship part of it, which I think most kids have a lot of difficulty with, is like, what do I talk about while I'm doing the tricks? So not just awkwardly like, hey, Dad, look at this. You give them how to frame the trick with the story.
And I also stress a lot that I encourage the kid to come up with a story, because the storytelling is really what sells the magic trick. And I say that you should treat every trick like it's a little mini one-act play. There's the setup, and then there's the goal, I'm going to make something disappear. And then there's this adversity where against all odds, you're somehow going to succeed in making this thing happen. And I break it down in that way. And I say that a trick falls flat when there's nothing behind it.
Well, how did you choose what tricks to put in the book and which ones you had to edit out from there?
Well, I wanted to include tricks that are brainy and have a clever ruse behind them. We magicians, we love performing things when we know that we're getting away with something. It's so fun when the trick is so simple and that we can't believe we're getting away with it and nobody can see what we're actually doing. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And then a second part of the answer is there are many things that I couldn't reveal because they're too good. Is that what you were asking? Like, only certain tricks are considered kosher for putting into a magic instruction book for the general audience. I talked to a bunch of magician friends and I filtered some things out. For the most part, if you create something yourself, if I've invented it for the first time, I can share it. There are a couple things in the book that are old principles that I've put my own fresh spin on, and that's totally fine to reveal. And then there are other things that are 100 years old that are fine to reveal now. And the golden rule is don't reveal anything that will ruin someone's magic show if they're doing it today. You can't give away the real trade secrets.
Oh, but who agrees which ones those are? Is there a website like these 100 tricks are not allowed to be published anywhere? Like, how do you know?
You don't. You have to talk to a lot of people and find out what's going to piss off people and what's not. And someone's always going to get mad about everything. So, you just try your best.
Yeah, we can talk about that in the bonus show. I think this is also overlapping with spoilers in Magic and spoilers in escape rooms. I think that there's some overlap there, but I think a lot of this stuff is unspoilable. And I think even if you look at some of the people who maliciously tried to undermine magic as a profession, like the masked magician back in the 90s.
Or all of TikTok right now.
Yeah, or all of TikTok. I still think that good magic, good escape rooms are unspoilable, but we can dig more into that later on.
Yeah, there's a lot of audience out there.
Yeah. You snuck in a lot of magic history and even some code and code-breaking history, which I personally enjoyed. It's a favorite topic of mine. There's even a page covering one of my favorite code-breaking mysteries, which are the Beale ciphers, which I only learned about as an adult. And I remember when I was first reading about this, I was like, oh, wow, this is super intriguing. And if I was a kid, I would be losing my mind learning about this. The basic premise is that there is allegedly a very large amount of gold buried somewhere in or around Virginia. And there are 3 enciphered messages. One of them was deciphered. The Declaration of Independence was the key to it. The other 2 have never been solved. And there's a whole big mystery about whether it's all BS or if it's real or if it's just that no one's ever found the right book or if it was already found and somebody put the wrong stuff in there. There's so many different layers to what this could be. It's like a national treasure story, except it's older than that movie. And I think in some ways it's more interesting. I really enjoyed seeing that there.
Yeah, and it's resulted in a lot of people's backyards in Virginia being dug up and a lot of trespassing.
Yep. To wrap up on the book, I hope that you don't mind me vocalizing this because I think that your book does a beautiful thing in that it does a sort of magic trick of its own on the kid who's reading it by encouraging them to perform for their parents. And I just really loved that the framing is used to empower the kid, but also you're doing a trick on the kid, getting them to go and come out of their shell and learn new skills and learn how to practice. And I just really appreciate all that's going on with this book.
Thank you. Yes, there's the promise of being able to pull one over on your parents, but I also wrap up the book by saying, you know what? Your parents actually want to be fooled too. They want to see you mastering something and practicing something, and they're going to be delighted watching you put into practice this secret information that you've learned and that you've mastered something and you've practiced something. And it really goes back to that first moment when I saw my dad get fooled and I wanted to learn the skills that would allow me to be the smartest person in the room. And I wrap up the book by saying it's the most special thing in the world to me when I am on stage performing the Enigmatist and I look out and I see my dad there and he has that same befuddled look on his face because he doesn't know how the tricks are done, but he's proud of me at the same time.
I guess we never outgrow it.
Yeah.
I have a real quick question for you before we start to move into the wrap-up. Talk to me about Brew and Clue with our mutual friend, the brilliant Emily Gillette.
Okay, I'll talk about this, but only if everyone listening promises not to beat us to the punch. Emily Gillette, who is a wonderful, dear, kind, and brilliant friend of mine. You may be familiar with her last name. Penn Gillette is her husband. Emily is a maven of all things puzzles and games.
And immersive and theater and
experiences, exactly. And when I had my eye injury, by the way, she was there for me and one of those people that I was talking to on the phone all the time, solving puzzles with. And we solved a lot of cryptic puzzles over the phone. We had this idea that just has like a holiday merch item that people would love to buy, that we would make a coffee mug that just says brew and clue on it, because everybody has their morning coffee and solves the crossword puzzle or does their Wordle or does their connections. So brew and clue is a product coming to you soon. And by soon, I mean we've been working on it for 3 years. And at some point, we will hire a graphic designer to make that coffee mug, and we will release it for the holiday collection.
This needs to be like a puzzle meetup. You meet up at the coffee shops, you have your coffees together, and you puzzle together. I'm into that.
Wow, I love that you called all my puzzle friends, David. That's really sweet of you.
It's part of the joy of making this show. I want to close with a personal question. You talk in your shows and throughout this interview about regularly solving crosswords with your mother. What does being able to share puzzles with your family mean to you, especially now that you're a father?
Yeah, I'm a new dad. My little girl, Cozy, which is short for Cosette.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is the best name. It's so cute.
Cozy Kwong. My wife really liked that nickname, and I liked the musical theater reference, so I approved. She's running around now. She's 15 months. It really is something that you can pass down through the generations. My favorite thing that I hear from audience members after a show is they come up to me and they say, I can't wait to bring my grandmother to this show because she solves the crossword puzzle every single day in pen. And I always hear that, in pen. It's like really important to these people. And they're always referencing this connection that they have with their parent and with their kid. And you're seeing the generations come out to my performances. And I think there's something really special. There's a shared love for this stuff that gets passed through family. When my daughter's a little older, I'll be doing that with her as well. In The Enigmatist, at the beginning, one of the moments I share with the audience is that when I was 16 years old, my mother took me to hear Will Shortz speak at a library on Cape Cod. That is a very special thing, right? Most kids are probably playing baseball and football in the summer on Cape Cod, but here we have this history professor of a mother who takes her son to hear Will Shortz speak at the Wellfleet Public Library. And Will played games with the audience, which really inspired what I'm doing today. He would divide the audience in half. He would say, stand up if you know the answer. That's very much in the DNA of what I do. And I got a bunch of questions right as a precocious young puzzle fan. And he signed my puzzle book to a puzzle champ. And I share that image in my show. And I say that inspired me, and my life was changed forever. And one of the nicest things that I just heard in Chicago was in the lobby, someone came up to me and said, David, you are doing for these kids what Will Shortz did for you. Oh, my heart melted. But I think it's there. I think the spirit of what I'm doing is exactly that. And I guess I'm trying to just share the joy of feeling smart. It's a very powerful thing when it's within your family, when it's your parents, when it's your grandparents, but it's also something that I'm trying to do with this book, and I'm trying to do with The Enigmatist, and I think that is shaping everything that I do today.
I think you're well on your way with the release of your new book. I'm so thrilled to share it with my niece and pass on my love of puzzles to the next generation as well. So, David, what is the best way for people to follow your work or connect with you?
Okay, yes, there are lots of ways. I'm very easy to find online. I'm usually at David Kwong on the various platforms. I've started putting out a Substack, which is every 2 weeks. That's called enigmatology, to borrow a term perhaps coined by Will Shortz. Will famously created that major at Indiana University. And I endeavor to put out a brand new crossword puzzle every 2 weeks via that platform. And through my website, davidkwongmagic.com. And How to Fool Your Parents is everywhere. It's in all bookstores right now. So please pick it up and share it with young burgeoning minds who want to feel like the smartest person in the room.
David, thank you so much for joining us. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time because I have admired your work really since I first encountered you. And I love seeing the way that you put your perspective and your experience on stage and you then pull people into it. And seeing the way that you're doing that now for families and kids just only adds to it. I respect it so much. I enjoy your work so much. I'm always looking forward to the next David Kwong production. And I strongly encourage everybody, especially if you've got kids in your life, 8 to 12, I'm guessing is like the absolute optimal range there. Get them a copy of How to Fool Your Parents, 25 Brain-Breaking Magic Tricks. We have a link in the show notes. Get the book. It's great. David, thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me. It's been so fun.
This episode of Reality Escape Pod is produced by Teresa Piazza with support by Lisa Spira, Emily Gillette, and Dave Shukin. We're edited by Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media, music by Ryan Elder, logo by Janine Proct, and all of this is brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com, your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events. Reality Escape Pod is mainly supported by Patreon backers. Creating these episodes takes a lot of time, care, and money. We're invested in creating a robust community of creators and enthusiasts, and we need your help. A lot of big content creators, they reach a point where their Patreon is so big that they don't know who is joining. I promise you, we are aware every single time someone backs us. We know who our long-term backers are. We send out handwritten letters, wax sealed by hand, to every single person who backs us on Patreon. We, as a team, celebrate every single person who joins because it means so much to us. The ongoing support that we get from our patrons is everything. It is so hard building a media business in this era, and we are only able to do it because of the continued support of so many wonderful people. And if you have not yet joined, I hope that you can consider it if it's something that you can afford. And for everybody who is supporting, we do provide a lot of extra content that we put a lot of love into. Every single episode has a bonus after show. In between seasons, we also make extra bonus content that only goes out to patrons. And we also have, for our higher level supporters, the Spoilers Club, where we dig deep into escape rooms and talk about everything that went into the making of them, the running of them, and the behind the scenes with the creators. Both shows are a labor of love, just like the one that you just listened to. To learn more, visit patreon.com/roomescapeartist. Link and details in the show notes. I would also like to thank our highest level Patreon supporters: Karen, Byron Delmonico, Mark from Keystone Escape Games, Paula Swan, Rex Miller, Chris Laughlin, Panic Room, Pat at Olivier Escape, Escaparium, Breakout Games, and Derek Tam. Thank you for your ongoing support. If you're looking for a way to support Reality Escape Pod that doesn't cost a dime, go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. Bonus points if you say some kind words. We put so much love into every single episode, and it means the world when you tell other people that this show is worth listening to. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and social proof matters. Your words matter. They help us immensely.
So my favorite trick to do in the Enigmatist involves stealing somebody's phone number on stage. I call them up. I say, bring up your phone. And I won't tell you how exactly I get their phone number, but I do. And then there's a reveal of their phone number. And I call it the history mystery. And I end up having them move around all of these photographs from history, and they end up choosing 5 historical figures and they get put on the board, and there's all sorts of layers to it. It's crazy. And when you take the birth years of these people, it reveals their phone number. That's my favorite effect in the show. But when I was doing the show in Los Angeles at the Geffen, there was one time where I called somebody up and I had them pick 5 photographs, and the birth years they were born in were revealed, and it didn't really look like a proper phone number. And I thought, this is not going to go well.
Uh-oh.
And I said, does this sound familiar to you? It was like a really weird, it just didn't look like a phone number. And the woman said, nope. And I said, okay, well, thanks for coming up. And that was great. So sometimes you just have to laugh, right? And so I did a little bit of audience research, and I asked the Geffen if I could get in touch with this patron to figure out what had gone wrong. So I reached out and I said, I'm always trying to improve the show. And as you know, I'm supposed to reveal your phone number. And I do that by figuring out what your phone number is, and I won't tell you exactly how I do that. And then I try to reveal it in the photograph. So, what is your phone number? And she told me some Los Angeles area code, and I said, I can't quite understand it, but maybe you should call your phone company and see if something's going on. And she did call her phone company, and she had found out that her phone had been hacked, and that there was some malware on her phone, so that when I was, through mysterious ways, accessing her phone and figuring out what her phone number is, I was getting like a number from China. It was literally a Chinese country code that preceded the number. So that was, she said, thank you very much for helping me out.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! I will end by citing Teller of Penn and Teller. They've come up so many times in this podcast. Teller has said to me, well, now we know that can happen. And that is the fun of a magic show.
I love it.